What's up, Gran Turismo fans? If you watched my video from Monday, you know I was missing some pace due to tyre management. I've since fixed my tyre wear and found more pace, and I'm going to show you guys what I did. I then went into some races and something happened which blew my mind. That's what you're looking at here, but I'm not going to tell you who this is right now. We'll save that for later. What I am going to show you today is a short version of what I teach coaching students to do in more detail. That is, find your mistakes and fix them so that you get quicker over the course of the week. So the first thing I did was go into TT on Thursday, which was the first time I'd touched the game since Monday, and I set a new lap time. But to achieve that lap, I had to work out what I was doing wrong first. This is where a lengthy time trial session is a good idea, but only if you walk away from it a better driver who understands your mistakes, as opposed to grinding laps for a lucky lap that you can't replicate again and can't back that up in the race. So, let me show you what I found. There is another tenth to come off of this lap, isn't there always? But taking my own advice and my own teachings, I didn't want to push time trial so hard that I lack race pace. So I set a lap that I feel I can back up in the race, and this is how I found it. Turn 1. I was slowing the apex down too much. By doing this, what it meant is I couldn't be more aggressive on the throttle on the exit. The principle, as I've mentioned here before in other videos, is the slower a car is going, the easier it is to induce wheel spin. The faster a car is going, the harder it is to induce wheel spin. In this case, simply carrying a bit more speed through the corner, rolling off with the brake a bit earlier, allowing the downforce to do the work, meant that the car not only had more grip because it's got more downforce, it's a Group 2 car, don't forget, but it also means it's easier to get the throttle down more aggressively without wheel spinning. This next one is a demonstration of how bad habits can creep back in. What I'm about to show you here, I already know. I tell coaching students to do this. But you can get into a rut sometimes, and it just goes to show how you have to check yourself and make sure that you're still doing the right thing. What is that? I wasn't getting on these curbs. Simply, you have to get one wheel on this curb, sacrifice some speed, stay nice and tight, don't run out any further than the middle of the road, and get onto this curb as well. And I do mean get the wheels on the curbs. Your actual forward momentum, your forward velocity is slower than if you try to take the wider line, but because you're taking a tighter radius, a shorter distance, it's actually faster. It also doesn't push the front tyres as much and saves tyre wear. One of the things I mentioned in my recent 6 Things Tips videos was that low rank drivers tend to turn in too late, too wide, trying to square it off for a late apex. Just to demonstrate that I'm not immune to that mistake myself, I was turning in too late into this hairpin. So what I was doing was trying to come in from the middle of the road, cut back for a late apex, and get a strong exit like that. It can work, but it's very hard to execute. So what I changed was just get to the inside. The inside is the fastest way around the track, and be patient. So rather than trying to take a wider square off line, just get to the inside, got on the white line, even got on the curb, just wait, rotate it, coast. This gives you a stronger, faster exit. It makes it easier to get the throttle down because the car's got more rotation, and it doesn't push the front tyres on the exit as well, which again saves tyre wear. Historically, this is one of the weakest corners on the track for me. It's one of those corners where the ghost would start escaping from me. I've probably figured this corner out on a level I never really have. I had the ghost to, I think, half a tenth loss through the corner. So what I had to do was take a wider entry into the corner. So this is all about balancing the throttle and the steering input. If you lift too much, the car's going to rotate more. If you don't lift enough, the car's going to understeer more. It's all about getting that right coordination of the throttle and the steering so that you can take this wider line through the corner. And what that enables you to do is to get onto the throttle here aggressively rather than only getting onto the throttle about here, which is what I was traditionally doing. This also comes down to trusting the downforce of the car. When you get onto the throttle earlier, you have to keep turning through the corner on the exit, but again, Group 2 GT500 car's got a lot of downforce, it can do it. Speaking of trusting the downforce, I was over braking for this turn. What this does counterintuitively, it makes you think you're at the limit of grip when you're actually not. Again, these GT500 cars have got a ton of downforce. If you brake too much, you bleed off that downforce. The car actually has less grip, which makes you think you are near the limit. What change did I have to make? I was braking too hard. Dab the brake and release it. Dab the brake and let it go, literally. Don't over brake. The other thing, which I was already doing because I do know this track and I do know this corner, this is what Digit was talking about in his stream and in his video this week. Steer less. How do you steer less? Turn earlier. The later you turn, the more you're going to have to turn. The earlier you turn, the more you can keep the steering straight. So keep the steering nice and straight through the corner. We're not turning very much. This allows us to take more speed through the corner. In my case, I was simply over braking. In this sequence here, I was also over braking again. What you're supposed to do here is get on the curb and then run out into the middle of the road, no wider than that. You then get off the brake and let the car coast through the corner, which enables you to get onto the throttle. I was braking too hard. What this meant is that when I got off the brake and coasted, the car's going too slow. I'm not deep enough into the corner to get the ideal line. What I was doing to then try and make up for that is I was getting on the throttle too early to try and make up for the car being slowed down too much, and getting on the throttle too early was actually pushing me wide through the exit of the corner, which means you can't get on the throttle hard. Again, I've talked about this patience on the throttle in my 6-tip videos. How did I fix it? I simply didn't brake as hard coming into the corner, so the car's coming in faster, then let off the brake, let the car coast through the corner, and now you can get on the throttle more aggressively because again your steering is straighter. This corner is probably where I found the most time. It's always been historically my absolute weakest corner on the track, and from coaching I'm pretty sure that's quite a common thing. So what did I do here? What was I doing wrong here? Essentially it came down to when do you accelerate out of the corner. You accelerate out of the corner here, which is objectively speaking before you've even done the corner. Again, this comes down to the downforce capabilities of the car. This is where you start exiting, this is where you start accelerating. What that means is you have to get your rotation done and your turning in point before this. I was turning into the corner too late, which in turn meant that I was understeering, which in turn meant I couldn't get on the throttle earlier. I had to turn into the corner earlier, coast earlier, which allows me to be more aggressive on the throttle here. Second thing I did, I was trying to exit this corner in 3rd gear. The top replays were using 4th gear. Total game changer. So then we come to Friday, and I had the energy to do some races between coaching sessions, which is unusual for me. I don't normally bother, I normally just rest. That's a sign of improving health for me. I wasn't expecting it to be especially competitive on Friday, not for my level anyway. There was a few A+ drivers, mostly A drivers, but P2 was an A+ driver and his qualifying time was only 2.5 tenths behind me, and he was able to set some very fast laps. He was setting, I think, a 32.5 fastest lap in this race before I took the purple lap nearer the end. Now that's fast, but let me show you the difference in tyre wear between him and myself. So the tyre wear you're looking at there for him is the tyre wear that I had on Monday. And the tyre wear you're looking at for me is the tyre wear that Digit had on Monday. So how did I achieve this? Well, firstly, by the things I learned in time trial. I transferred those things into the race, and those improved lines helped. Secondly, it was by focusing on these 3 things. Steer less. You achieve this by turning into the corner earlier. Think about having straighter, more narrow, tighter entries into the corner. Save the turning for when you're coasting. Coast more. Get off the brake, let the car coast, be patient on the throttle. That is literally all you have to do. And if you're running a tyre temperature app, try to keep the load bearing tyres, that's normally going to be the front left or the front right, below 90 degrees as much as possible. I noticed that I was actually around 3 degrees lower on tyre temperatures on Friday than I was on Monday. They do go over 90, but it tends to only happen towards the last couple of laps when you do this correctly. Alright, so for those of you that just wanted the tyre wear information, you got it. Thanks for watching, I appreciate it. You don't have to stick around. For those of you that are sticking around, what was that thumbnail all about? Well, there's nothing like testing this against a faster driver. So I loaded into another race and oh no, it's Damien. So just to give some perspective here, I have never stayed with Damien for the entire duration of a race when it's just me and him, which has only happened a couple of times, 2, 3 times maybe, I think. When we're in a train of cars, you're in that slipstream train, it is easier, providing you're in the flow state, to stay with a faster driver. When it's just you and him, it's a different ball game. It's not the same. And I know and I understand how, as the general masses in low A plus, A rank and down, you look at someone who is consistently top 100, consistently top 50, and you view them as an alien. I did, so I completely understand that. But Damien really is an alien. Damien is one of those people where you really can talk about him as one of the fastest drivers in the game. He hasn't qualified for the World Tour. In my opinion, he should have. I'm sure it's only a matter of time. And I don't know how many world records he has, but when you look at the leaderboards, he's always there in the top 10, and I can only assume he has had multiple world records at this point. So, it's okay, Luke. You don't have to stay with Damien. Just race your own race, look after your tyres, and bring home P2. There is no shame in that. You don't have to beat him. You don't even have to stay with him. On lap 2, I had a bad final turn and Damien had closed right up, and I didn't fight it, just let him take the position. So heading down into the first turn, I just pulled in behind him and went into let's just try and stay with him mode. I feel the need to caveat this at the moment by saying I'm pretty sure this isn't full tilt Damien here. I'm pretty sure he could go faster. It appears that he only dropped in for one race and that was it. So I don't think this was Damien fully warmed up, fully in the groove at his absolute best. But even still, a slightly off-pace Damien is still extremely fast. And then he got a penalty. So, okay, we're going to stay with him for at least one more lap then. So jumping forwards one lap, Damien serves his penalty and we retake the lead. Lap 6, and this is normally where I had to pit on Monday because I didn't have the tyre management to do that 7th lap. But now, if you look at my tyres, they're great. The performance is still there. And this is also where you start to ask yourself weird questions like, is Damien just playing with me? Is he just staying behind and watching what I'm doing and biding his time before he goes for a move? So I started to think about strategy because having stayed with Damien, actually having led Damien for the majority of the race so far, I started to think I might actually be able to race him for the win here. So I started to think about strategy. It was never going to be a lap 6 pit, not with this much improved tyre wear, but I was thinking, do I want to go for lap 8? Lap 8 would give me insanely good tyres for the last few laps. I would be able to try and push borderline qualifying laps and, it sounds weird to even say it, try and put Damien under some pressure. But the counter flip argument to that is that he would potentially pit lap 7, get an undercut on me, and would I be able to chase Damien down? So I decided to err on the side of caution and pit on lap 7. And Damien followed me in. So this is actually the moment where I knew I now had the pace to stay with Damien, because a faster driver has more flexibility in his strategy. A faster driver also will tend to be able to look after their tyres better. There is a correlation there, because if you're faster, you can look after your tyres by simply holding back more and not putting as much energy through those tyres. Whereas a slower driver is going to need to push harder to stay with the faster driver, so he can't do that. the fact that Damien chose to follow me into the pit on lap 7 tells me that I have to assume he wasn't comfortable pitting on lap 8 and having to chase me down. Man, that sounds insanely wild to even suggest that. But as the laps keep ticking by, and the gap's actually gone up, not down. It's now between 8 and 9 tenths, and it's been that way for a few laps now. So I was just trying to stay in the zone, is all I can say, because these are the races where they're landmark moments, they're pivotal moments in your progression where you can see that you're improving. And I've done this before. It's called imposter syndrome. I've done one of these videos before where you can't quite believe what you've achieved. And you have to be careful in these moments because you're doing everything great. At any level this happens. You guys have all experienced it, whether you're a B driver in an A race, etc. It's the same feeling. You're doing everything right, and you can actually ruin your race by pondering on that too much, by thinking about that too much. You can actually ruin your race by overthinking the fact that you're doing great. So, experience is starting to gain pace with me. Being in these situations a few times, I'm beginning to be calmer with this kind of situation. So I just stayed in the flow. I stayed in the zone and I told myself, just keep hitting your lines, stay in the rhythm and keep doing what you're doing. Now, it's still Damien, right? I mean, I ain't gonna drop him. And as you can see, he closed the gap back up. He got well within my slipstream range, so it's now back under half a second. But it is the penultimate lap, and however this has happened, I am still in the lead. So you better believe I'm racing for the win. This is not a normal Monday night top split race where I'm gonna willingly sacrifice the position to Damien in order to bring home P2, because if I fight him, other drivers will catch us and I potentially risk losing P2. No, that doesn't apply this time because we've dropped the entire field. So now it is Mano v Mano and we're going for the win. So as we approach end of lap 12, beginning of lap 13, I take a look behind me and I take a defensive line because I know Damien's going to go for it now on the last lap. He has no choice. I think I could have defended this a little better, but I really didn't want to ruin this by hitting him, so I just made sure to give him ample room. What can I say? He did me around the outside. It was a hell of a move. It really was. Even if I gave him ample room, you have to be so good to pull that move off. So round turn 1, yeah, insane. Huge congratulations for that move. I mean, probably means nothing to Damien, but to me, it was mighty impressive. And I just tried to stay with him. I tried to keep the pressure on. I tried to keep hunting him down. And there was half an opportunity here. I'm going to put my hands up. It was a late lunge. I made the apex, but it was a lunge, and I potentially would have hit him if he hadn't moved at the last second. So I gladly dropped back into P2. If I had hit him, I would have made sure to give the position back. Yeah, don't get desperate, Luke. Just, it's been a good race. But what can I say? I didn't get the position back. It is still Damien. And in this last sector, he just seemed to light some kind of rocket fuel underneath him. And I was pushing hard here. Really hard to stay with him. But there we go. I think I can be happy. So take inspiration from this, guys, because this is hard work paying off. And go and look after your tyres. Learn to do that because it will gain you a lot of positions over the egotistical tyre burners that are generally populating lower ranks. What can I say? Guys, thank you ever so much for watching. Get out of here and go race.